let's get our next session going here. It's and the topic again is lessons learned from NSF and the KECK funded programs and American Indian and Indigenous community involvement. That's a good question right there. And so I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Bob, and because he has a team of folks on there. I'm on his panel as well. I can see as Dr. Matt saw and others. So Bob, why don't you tell us what you're thinking right now about this idea?
Yeah, I really think that the Humboldt State model, in terms of a campus developing durable partnerships with its tribal communities. So we're going to feature that first. I'll ask Amy Sproles to go first here.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you again.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for starting the day off with such a wonderful conversation. I want to make sure to welcome my co-presenters today, Dr. Caitlin Reed. Caitlin, I think I see your lovely smiling face in the room. And also, I'm thrilled to say that we have two students that will be presenting with us today, Carrie Tully and Cody Henriksen. And we're just here to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that we've learned at Humboldt State University through our place-based learning community implementation. Some of you may have been at our presentation yesterday where we discussed that program that is funded in part by the KECK program that was spearheaded by Bob and Ula. And as I mentioned yesterday, one of the primary goals of the place-based learning community is to really connect all of HSU's STEM first-year students with Native people of our region. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about the Rising Tides program, the importance of working collaboratively with our tribal partners and our incredible faculty in the Native American Studies program. You'll see here that this slide is just put in place to remind you of the number of different people and voices that have been brought together to develop this program that really does allow all first-year STEM students at HSU to take a Native American Studies course, work with the people of our place and region. As I mentioned yesterday, HSU is on the ancestral homelands of the Wiyot tribe. I'm talking to you today from Gudini of Wiyot lands. And it's really been not only so important for all of our students here, it's really allowed, I would say, many different entities at the university to learn why it's so critical to develop our programs collaboratively with our Native students, faculty, staff, and community partners. And this is something we've learned over time, right? I would say that over the duration of the last 6 or 7 years, we launched a first community, and through the grace and collaborative spirit of all of our partners, we've really learned some incredibly important lessons on how we can best provide place-based education in the university model. We've learned that it allows for authentic weaving of our knowledge systems throughout all the curricular and co-curricular experiences. It ensures the programming addresses the goals and values of all our partners, not just those of the university or the leads on a project. It helps our faculty, staff, and administrators and students become allies for Indigenous students, faculties, and communities and tribes to meet the grand challenges. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. And it's really critical for building durable partnerships between the university and our Native communities. An amazing example of a way that co-creating programming can really be successful and meet many of these goals and objectives is the work done by Caitlin and students in the Native American Studies program to develop a food sovereignty lab and workspace here on our campus. And so now I'm honored to introduce to you Dr. Caitlin Reed, who's going to talk a little bit about this work. Caitlin?
Awesome, thanks, Amy. Do you mind if I take over screen share so I can change windows when I need?
Absolutely. I'll just stop sharing and you'll go ahead and pull it up. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all. I hope you're doing well. Let me get going here. Let's see. From current slide. So I am faculty in the Native American Studies department here at HSU and the co-director of Rudalagur, the Food Sovereignty Lab and Workspace here at HSU. I'm going to be relatively brief today because I want to give like a third of our time that me and Amy have to let the students kind of tell their story. I'm going to play a clip of that. Those two students are here, so maybe if we have discussion time later, they can chime in. Just a couple things. The HSU Food Sovereignty Lab is an interdisciplinary and collaborative effort. It has been student designed and community informed from the get-go. This is a space to develop curriculum, internships, research opportunities, workshops, programs to support things like traditional food preparation, basket weaving, and regalia making for both students and community members to utilize this space. And then aims to integrate values of ecological sustainability, biocultural sovereignty of Indigenous peoples, and community involvement to support Indigenous food sovereignty. We have several community partners that are members of our steering committee and have been involved in the planning of the lab. They include Blue Lake, Padawat, the Wiyot tribe, Trinidad, Tolowa, Rezagini, the Native Women's Collective, Indian Collective, Save California Salmon, and Yurok Tribe. I think I got all of them, but there might be a few more missing. People are always asking to get involved and to see what kind of stuff we're doing. This is where the space will be. And so this lab has not been built yet. Groundbreaking is scheduled for October 8th of this year. So we're incredibly excited. I can't wait to get my picture with a hard hat on. And that will kick off Indigenous Peoples Week at Humboldt State University this year. And so on the left, you can see the plans for what the interior of the lab will be. The right shows physically where the space is. And so the building in the right-hand corner that you can see, that's where the Native American Studies department is housed. Part of this process to get the Food Sovereignty Lab required a very long, complicated, and emotionally tense process to secure this space. We've secured the space, we're building this lab. So like there's a positive ending to the story, but I think part of the lessons learned are what are the struggles that Indigenous faculty, students, community members, and departments have to go through to really get this work done, right? And so I'm gonna cede 5 minutes of my presentation time to let them tell this story. So give me 1 second, I have it loaded up and ready to go. Oh, I'm just gonna make sure I'm sharing audio. So give me 1 second to click that button. There we go. All right, and the two students speaking in the video are HSU graduate student Carrie Tully and HSU Marine Biology Native American Studies major Cody Hendrickson.
And so we submitted this application to USFAC. We waited months to hear back from them and to find out the status of this application. And after many attempts to kind of contact the committee about what was going on, we were told that it had been denied months earlier without receiving notice of that. We were cited COVID-19 as like the reason why we didn't hear back, but I think it happened in February that they denied our request, and you know, COVID shelter in place started in the middle of March. So there was that. We were also denied because they said this space wouldn't be an inclusive space for all people across campus to use and wouldn't meet the standards of our space request. And that this space was highly sought after, even though it hadn't been used in a year. It was like this highly sought after space, so they had to like consider other applications that didn't even exist. So it was very confusing, very stressful. And again, like Cody was saying, it was like on one side, on one hand, we were being praised by the university for this really hard, this great research that our class did, and the presentation and everything that we did for the competition, but being denied the space at the exact same time on the other hand. So it was very confusing and stressful and angering. And so the students kind of didn't give up, and I'll let Cody kind of take over from there, but we didn't take this as a sign of like, okay, game over, I guess we're done, we kind of decided to take it as an opportunity to figure out how we were actually going to get the space that we wanted.
Yeah, and so something why this space was so key to why we wanted this space, beyond that it's centrally located within Native American Studies, it's across from Goudini Gallery, it's next to the Native American Forum, which really centralizes Native American Studies to have there. One of the main reasons we really wanted this space, it came to our attention that this space originally was actually designated for this, for a cultural workspace basketry regalia making spot. And through a bunch of bureaucratic tape and taking little by little, a classic story HSU has had with Native American stories, the space was taken away from the program and it was turned into the Hilltop Marketplace, which ultimately failed miserably as no one cared for energy drinks and stuff. Overpriced, junk food is really all that they sold. And it closed and stayed vacant for a year. And so we're like, oh, perfect, let's apply for it. We were denied. And then so after, learning of, kind of how we were pushed around with the decision, we decided to, we started researching the actual bylaws of the committee that denied us and looking at do they actually have this authority, and as we read into all their bylaws and how they organize themselves as a committee, we found huge gaps in procedure. Just nothing was articulated how you would go about things within the committee itself. One person would tell us, oh, we can do this, and then another person would be like, oh wait, no, we can't. So within the community, they didn't even have a clear understanding of their own structure or power or authority. And so we decided that through this, we couldn't trust the steering committee to do a job that they were supposed to do. And we didn't feel we could trust them to do it without racial bias, because we were cited that this wouldn't be an inclusive space for all. And which sounds purely, they based that because we said it was going to be a Native American Studies lab, which I don't understand why that would have to only include Native American students when any student can take those classes. Yeah. The majority of students taking those classes aren't Native. And so we actually ended up taking 5 students, Dr. Kutcha Riesling Bottom and Dr. Kutcha Riesling Baldy and Adam Cantler, the natural resource specialist for the Wiyot tribe. We all did testimonies in front of the HSU Senate, one after another, and described, why we were so upset with this process, and the overt racial bias that they were pressing on us. And, we had really passionate testimonies. I started to tear up at one point when talking about salmon, and when they started deliberating, all they were like, yes, we support your ideals, but, we have to think about the process. We have to think about, our laws and these standards and what precedent this sets for other people. So on one hand, they're telling us, oh, yes, you're right. This is a good thing. But on the other hand, they're slapping it away. And so after a really big heated back and forth, we got a very confusing answer at the end, which was that the original denial got withdrew and so then got approved, and then we were approved conditionally. And one of those conditions being that we had to fund the lab entirely on our own, which I don't know every lab's story on HSU's campus, but I would be pretty certain to say there's not a single lab on campus that hasn't received funding from HSU to be implemented and to.
Okay. I'm going to pause it there, but the entire panel session is available on YouTube and I'll share it. I know my presentation time is almost up. I just have a couple more slides I'll spend a few more seconds on. And so here you can see the timeline. So Cody left us off here, May 2020, when we had additional conditional approval. And so then we started fundraising. By September 2020, we had fundraised $110,000 on our own. Academic year 2020 to 2021, we hosted a food sovereignty speaker series, a film series. In March, the students launched a crowdfunding campaign and they raised over $30,000 on their own. That same month, we got another $70,000 grant. We've had donations from the Intertribal Ag Council. We've done some publications in local food guides. And then we just had an amazing donor help us get to our final goal of $250,000 to begin construction. Construction will begin October 8th of this year, and the grand opening of the lab will occur next fall. Some of our proposed projects include an internship program, alternative spring break, youth camps, a food guide, a documentary, and then the one I'm most excited for, an Indigenous foods festival, where I hope we'll bring a bunch of Indigenous chefs and we'll make a show like Chopped. Then the students can have a go and it'll be like Nailed It. Should be great fun. For folks interested, all of our speaker series events are available on YouTube. We have ones focusing on fire and food sovereignty and climate change. These are some of the films that we've shown. I'm sure we will be doing more film screenings in the future. And then lastly, please stay informed, stay involved. You can follow us on Facebook, sign up for our newsletter, check out our website, and I will drop all of these links in the chat. I think my time's up, so I'll quit screen sharing here and turn it over to the next group of people.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was awesome. I'll turn it over to Ula now, I believe. Ula?
Aloha kakahiake. Good morning in Hawaiian. Sorry. Okay. I am gonna return to Mike Ross, our ethnobotany professor, Native Hawaiian, who's gonna help us understand a little bit about what we have been doing at the Grand Challenges. Ed keeps asking, what the heck is KECK? I would say KECK is probably the least important. It was generous of them to fund our work. But what really happened was community educators, educators at higher institutions or other institutions all coming together and creating things together, learning together and creating things together. Our Hawaii funds were mostly spent on large gatherings that we had annually. In fact, we started before we got the money, where we would bring together people from the communities, from the institutions of higher education, mostly faculty from there, but also graduate students that were teaching, and very important for our work, undergraduate students. And we will have time to create, time to be together, time to learn together. And we would focus around a grand challenge, which unfortunately there are many of. We would have some learning about that, some talks by Indigenous leaders around issues like that, but we would not pretend in any way to give a complete description of the topic or go into depth with it. It was just kind of to set the framework and understand, because the participants themselves were the experts as well. And then we would have a number of tools available. Some of us are doing service learning and internships a lot, and we would be there to help with that. We would have other people that were working on sustainability across curriculums. They would be there. We would have leaders from the field, from the communities sharing, and even in the last bigger event we had, we were all going out and working the field, not just looking at it, we were working at it. So all these things would be coming together, but everything started with our work with Center of Science Education for New Civic Engagements and Responsibilities. So the central part of these grand challenges was built around how do we create a learning module, a course, an assignment that were I'm going to share the screen now, where we could, sorry. This is always a tricky part. Where there would be an opportunity to create something together in a short time. And here Mike Ross, our native Hawaiian ethnobotany professor, is going to talk about the work that was done in that field.
Aloha, everyone. Thanks for the time to share a little bit in this presentation. My name is Mike Ross, and I just want to take a moment and share about some of the ways in which we've been able to get more Indigenous community involvement in some of these kinds of things that we're involved in. We've been offering workshops through the TBS lens that has really been helpful in inspiring a lot of folks, whether they teach to an Indigenous audience or they are Indigenous themselves, to really incorporate things that help engage students at a more, a higher level, sort of a high impact practice type assignment. So if you're not familiar with Censor, Censor is an annual conference that's held every summer, and a group of individuals that work together and collaborate in ways that help students become more engaged in science and social science, and in their communities especially. So a lot of civic engagement and community engagement. I attended a Censor conference a few summers ago, and I attended Dr. Ellen Goldie from Warford College, one of the workshops she does in sensorizing a course. It's an amazing workshop, and you can actually watch it here at this YouTube link. And I was greatly inspired, as well as a lot of others were, to try to put something together and bring this back home for folks that weren't able to attend that national conference. And this course design workshop, as I mentioned, we've run a few times now at several different workshops and symposia. And it's inspired a lot of individuals to sensorize their course, to use large, capacious issues to sort of engage their students in the topic or the subject that they're covering. It's led to several new courses, lots of new assignments, and many different projects that have been developed. It can be done very, very quickly in just an hour or so. It's a lot of fun. You get people together in the same room, at least prior to the pandemic, and you get some poster boards, some markers, some sticky papers, and things like that, and brainstorm really quickly some ideas, and essentially design a course in under 60 minutes. Now, because of the pandemic, it's been a little bit more challenging, but we have redesigned it so that it can be offered virtually. And that's been quite successful as well. We have a lot of people that enjoy this. We hope others would be interested in holding course design workshops like this, seeing the success that we've had. And we'd be glad to talk more and share more on what we've been doing with anyone that's interested. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time and listening.
I apologize for forgetting to improve the sound. I hope it went through all right. This will also be on STEM Island if you want to take an extra look at it. And we can maybe later put the links up in the chat. Can you see the presentation? Oops.
Yes. Or there it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So I think Amy Schachter is here. She actually made this presentation. What happened was that this work that we did together, all those creations were so unbelievable, inspiring. So we kind of continued the work, and we had that huge privilege of meeting every week, or sometimes more frequently, for more than a year now, to learn from each other and to talk about how can we broaden this out, how can we not lose this momentum, how can we keep doing this work? So we actually got an NSF Include strategic planning grant and started working on our ideas. So what we wanted was to broaden the participation of individuals from underrepresented and underserved groups in STEM, especially in STEM fields that lack diversity. And I'm all with Ed and his diversity remark. We wanted to use the lessons learned, the promising practices, all the transdisciplinary work with the outset in Indigenous knowledge, evidence-based mechanisms, and the science of broadening participation, and the research and evaluations from past and present efforts to broaden the participation in STEM, and then bring together programs, people, organizations, technologies, and institutions to achieve a result at scale, and provide new research and leverage NSF's broadening participation investment. So we wanted to create a larger alliance that's committed to collectively achieving the common goals, true objectives. We did talk a lot about some of the things that's been brought up today too, how important it is to look at students as whole people, as the institutions' role in destroying or supporting the journey of education, and kind of the sense of place. This entails so much, including also what Sam was bringing up yesterday about the colonial history, the colonial situation. How did we even get to where we are today with Indigenous peoples in education and life in general? Hawaii has really devastating examples of what has happened. So we kind of talked about these 4 strands of an institutional role. How can we push an institution to be a good and durable partner? So we have to realize that we belong in many, many ways to families, communities, Indigenous nations, campus, to a specific major, maybe a concentration, can be graduate students. We can also eventually have a sense of belonging to a career. Where are we? What is the place? What was it? What will it be in the future? What's the campus? And again, we need to acknowledge the settler colonialism and destruction of self-determination in many ways. We know that many of our institutions are sitting on Indigenous lands, of course, because that's all of it, but also very special Wahipana sacred places. We had to keep in mind the sense of responsibility and reciprocity, and that is to everything around us, to all the levels of communities that we are part of, to the environment and beyond humans, to cultural traditions and practices, and to the future generations. And our sense of becoming something, students, leaders, scholars, change agents, mentors, and transmitters of Indigenous knowledge. So in a more narrow terms, what did we think that we could work on? Where could we go? So we decided to focus on these 4 objectives for a start. So we wanted, this is not small, we wanted to transform STEM fields through a redesigned curriculum in all STEM areas, to take advantage of both Western and Indigenous knowledge systems. It's too light seeing. Sorry, my alarm. Tackle grand challenges, and here's a list of them, to support STEM success. And I have big issues with the word success, I'm sorry. But we need to define it way beyond getting a degree and a job. for Indigenous students through programs and infrastructure. So student services, student opportunities, places, a lot of what we just learned about the initiatives that Humboldt states are exemplary in this area. And then build really meaningful, authentic, and long-lasting campus community partnerships. We also realized that we have so much more to learn. So institutional and programmatic partners, in order to kind of do this work well, we needed to listen and learn and talk. And I think what we're doing here today is one of those ways. And then we would create larger gatherings where we could get together. We have very active student, both undergraduate and graduate students, Indigenous students that are part of this work. I don't know if Summer is here, she might be, she could add to that. We also realized that the institutional partners were already part of this work for a number of reasons, come from many different levels in some ways in this work. And the idea is that we help each other go to where we want to go. So here are kind of 4 different levels of institutions, and these are those that are currently working on all this. And everybody has something really important to contribute. Even our level 3 partners, as we call them, that has very little actual integration of Indigenous knowledge at this point. But that is a valuable experience as well. And we hold strategic planning gatherings regularly. We're getting up for our 3rd one. We should have more detailed information about that soon. And any of you that are interested are welcome to come and join us. Bob?
Yeah, I'll be pretty quick here. I just want to kind of talk about data issues that I think pose a challenge for us in this work. Going back to Sam's comments about statistics and science, how do we develop the statistical basis for this work? I just wanted to highlight the EPSCoR goals here. And I think Dr. Shockey's evaluation questions are a really good start on how we're doing in this gathering to achieve these goals. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think one of the issues is to get a better grasp of data and data issues. One of the opportunities, I think, is that we have a Census 2020 coming out, and that census used a concept of stating your identity as American Indian or Alaska Native, or in combination with another group. That category in 2010, 5.2 million American Indian and Alaska Natives identified themselves as American Indian or Alaska Native alone or in combination with another group. That went up to 9.7 million in the 2020 census. So that's an interesting piece, because as we align our data systems, this new idea of in combination with another group is going to really increase the number of Native American, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander groups as they show up in enrollment data at campuses. I don't know that our data systems are ready to include this in combination with another group category. State level data systems we need to be developed based on the new 2020 census. And at this point, the University of Hawaii data systems do not have this race alone or in combination category. But I think what this points out in general is there are more Indigenous students on our campus than our data systems are allowing us to discover. And I think in terms of representation and programming, we need to highlight that this is true, that there are more Indigenous students on our campus than our data systems are actually counting. Next slide, please. There was a new study out by the National Science Board in 2021, looked at American Indian and Alaska Native as underrepresented and participating in the science and engineering workforce. Their summary was that the number of these students and professionals needed to quadruple from 15,000 to 60,000 by 2030. So I would suggest that, this is a National Science Board and National Science Foundation report. This is a good metric for collaboration, lots of work involved, but at least we now have a number developed by the National Science Board, and this speaks to the number of Indigenous students, both in STEM programs, in STEM graduate school, with STEM PhDs, and in the science and engineering workforce. So this is a useful number for us to think about, pathway development from undergraduate to graduate to career. Now, that report also indicated that Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders were slightly overrepresented in the science and engineering workforce, but combined, these two groups, American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, remain significantly underrepresented in the science and engineering workforce. Next, please. We did some work on this with something called the Peace Experiment, Native Hawaiian and Native American Engineering Education. I don't know if you know about this publication, but it lists the different, Peace stands for Pre-Engineering and Education Consortium. And so these folks were specifically focused on engineering education, and there's quite a lot of useful publication from North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Hawaii that we might want to look at and build on in terms of how we discuss building a science and engineering workforce. Next. At Kapiolani, we had developed an associate in science and natural sciences. It's a 4-year transfer pathway in natural sciences and engineering. So it's a 2-year transfer degree, and NSF is invested in. Annually, we have about 62 Native Hawaiian students in this degree program, about 12 complete a degree every year, and about 20 transfer to the UH Manoa campus. Strong support services, undergraduate research and mentoring, and then a STEM learning center. And this speaks to the importance, I think, of a sense of place on campus, place where Native Hawaiian students can go and get support, build their confidence in their science and engineering educational potential, and get a lot of well-structured mentoring. We also developed an academic subject certificate in botany, and sustainability. And you can see that one of the courses is an ecology course, and the other is Mike Ross's course on Hawaiian plants. This certificate is attracting a lot of students who aren't really in STEM, but are in our general education program, as all the courses in this transfer to the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And then we developed a sustainability and climate action plan out of my office at Kapiolani for this period, and we're going to update that this year. So we're trying to see if sustainability and climate action can become an institutional priority that would support Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students. Next slide, please.
I think that's the last one. Oh, sorry.
No. Okay, so here's what our data system looks like at Kapiolani. You can see here that the first number in the blue column is the fall enrollment of Native Hawaiian students at the campus, and then we look at what percentage of degrees, STEM degrees, and transfer those students have. So this is our kind of comparative framework over that 5-year period. We're very pleased that the overall enrollment of Native Hawaiians, and when you add in the Pacific Islanders, it's over 21% now. And we're still got some work to do in closing the success gaps in STEM. We were closer earlier. I think COVID hit us a little bit in terms of students not be able to get to the STEM Learning Center and have that sense of place and collegiality with other Native Hawaiian students. So I think that's been an impact of COVID is the depth of collaboration and mentoring that's available in the STEM Learning Center. It has not been available to them. So I think that explains the slight reduction in STEM degrees. But transfer is very positive. So we sort of closed that gap in 2020. 19% of students, Native Hawaiian students, were enrolled, and 19% of those students then transferred. So we're very pleased that we were able to close that gap. So this is sort of our data view. I think that other campuses might want to develop. And what we found in the EK2 Alliance is that there isn't a lot of attention to capturing or knowing just exactly how many Native students are on campuses. And I think this is part of a real problem with sweeping these students and not developing specific programs for them, is that they don't have the data to document that a dean or a provost needs to pay attention to this particular population. I think this is a big structural challenge. Next, I think that's it. Maybe one more.
No, there's more.
Okay, yeah. So we looked at the different majors. You can see that computer science, pre-engineering, all of the different engineering fields. We have 36 students who've transferred to Manoa in one of the engineering fields, 11 in biology, 7 in biology, and 5 in botany. Anyway, so that's the kind of data system I think we're developing. We're developing it with all 10 UH system campuses. So they all have similar kinds of reporting on how they're doing as Indigenous servant. Final slide is sort of what next. We're trying to move to the issue of resilient neighborhoods, resilient communities, resilient villages, and getting students involved in questions of building more resilient communities, because we're already seeing the impacts of climate change in terms of coastal erosion, more frequent hurricanes, and how do we be resilient to that. So finally, I'll talk just quickly in terms of the research agenda. My research agenda is really focused on sort of the 2 E's, education and employment, and the 2 H's, health and housing. And I've done most of this work over my career and actually co-authored with Samoan authors. This one here talks about transformations in housing and how housing changes from traditional Samoan houses without walls to large public housing communities in urban centers. And it was a complex topic, and I didn't think I could get to it without really amplifying the voice of my Samoan colleague. So I'm done. Thank you, Willa, very much. Thank you.
I was hoping we had time to hear from the 2 Humboldt State students. But I don't know what our timekeeper is saying.
We do have 2 minutes left in the session, but we are going into a half an hour break after this. So if people want to hang on a little bit later, I don't see any problem with that. Or take a shorter break.
All right. So Amy and Caitlin and Cody and.
Yeah, I see Cody and Carrie are here. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves and have anything you'd like to share with the group? Thanks again so much for joining us today and for your great work here on campus.
Yeah, of course. Yakali do. Cody Henriksen Ilan Shida. Nananchik Shunkta Nilan Shida. Hello, my name is Cody Henriksen. I am Denina and Sugpiak, an enrolled member of the Ninilchik Village Tribe. That's Alaska Native. I'm also finishing up my last semester at Humboldt State University in Marine Biology and Native American Studies.
Hey everyone, I am Carrie Tully. I am currently, we both have puppies today. Look at that. Currently at one of my offices, one of my jobs. And so I'm trying to get some stuff here done. But I'm so glad to be here. This is really awesome. Thanks for inviting us, Amy. I'm a graduate student in the Environment and Community program at HSU and working on finishing up my thesis for the last while. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a minute. And I've been working, I was one of the founding students, as you guys kind of learned, to work on and kind of help put together the Food Sovereignty Lab, or the plans for it at least, along with Cody. And it's just been a really exciting process. The whole time has been really exciting and stressful at times as well. But I just can't express how excited we are to know that we're breaking ground on the 8th of October, and to see all of the hard work that all of my classmates and my colleagues have done to work on this project. It's just been an incredible process to see come to fruition. And so we're just really happy and excited to be part of all of that. And yeah, thanks again for having us here.
Yeah, I'd just like to say about the whole project, it's been a very empowering turn of events. Both Carrie and I have gotten so much experience from this in terms of learning how to present in a pandemic world and actually being really successful at it, learning. We did fundraising and all this amazing community-based efforts. And really, even before this lab is being built, we're putting out material, we're supporting students. And, I'm one of those students that has been supported. I was lucky enough to actually work for the lab for a semester. And just, I can only imagine what a space like this will really do for our community, for our school, and also particularly for our Native students. I am coming from Alaska, very far away from my, traditional lands, and to be able to pursue my degrees with my whole self, and, and that really empowers my, education and my career path. It's been incredibly amazing.
And Cody, I hadn't heard you speak your language that much until just today. I was like, oh my gosh, that's new. I haven't heard that part yet. And so just to say that Cody and I have done a lot of growing together and a lot of work together. And so, just like that process alone has been wonderful. And so, yeah, I guess if there's any questions, I don't know if we're doing questions or how much time we're giving for this, but happy to answer any questions people have about the lab or about the process or anything.
I'll just quickly say, folks should sign up for our newsletter, so you can get periodic updates about what's going on with the Food Sovereignty Lab. So you can sign up for our newsletter in the chat.
I can add that the work at Humboldt State is just so inspiring, and it's not easy to take institutions created in a deep colonial setting and make it into a place where Indigenous knowledge comes first. But we are looking at what's happening at Humboldt State, and really, really inspiring. Keep up the good work, guys. Thank you.
We are a group of very persistent individuals. I would say in the spring of 2020, when everything was exploding in the world with COVID, and everything was online and none of us knew how to use it yet. And it was finals week and final project season. And everybody was just so overwhelmed. We were no, we're going to make time for this. This is important. This is what we built. This is our project. We feel slighted because of these decisions that have come down. And so the fact that we didn't give up, and because none of us, we kind of didn't allow each other to give up, because one person was let's just do this. And then the rest of us were let's just do this. And so I think that momentum is really carried with us. And it just really shows the strength of the students when we have the support of the community, the support of one another, and the support of the Native American Studies Department. Caitlin and Dr. Kodja Risling-Baldi, we couldn't have done it without these really important people helping lead this project forward. But yeah, not easy, but very exciting.
Yeah, I'm constantly amazed by the efforts of my peers, but really, I would say a lot of it is the support we all have been getting, where yes, we've faced opposition in some form or this, but to have the support of honestly like a lot of like strong Indigenous women, you know, who are like pushing this forward is really the, you know, it's the constant story I see with it. And I'm super grateful to be a part of it.
Well, and I want to just also express that you all have really been role models for the students and faculty on our campus, right? I will always remember being on the Zoom of the Senate meeting when you all presented and Kutcha drove it. And I think, Cody, you described in the video how confusing that meeting was. And at the end, it didn't really make sense, the conclusions that the body came to. And it was watching the entire tone and tenor of the Zoom room change over the course of your presentations. I mean, I wish every student at HSU could see that video. It really goes to show how powerful the student voice is in being agents of change. And it was incredible, I think, for all faculty in that room to see Kutcha and Caitlin and everyone see how faculty can empower that voice as well. It helped me become a better role model, I think, as well. So thanks to the both of you and to Caitlin for really setting this incredible example for our campus.
I think the Senate meeting might have been recorded, to be honest with you. And I've been wanting to go back and watch it myself. And so it would be interesting actually to go back and watch and see, just to remember how it went. And like you said, to see like the tone of the room change, because being in it was very emotional. And Cody spoke to that. But to really go back and watch that as an observer, as opposed to being in it in that moment, would be pretty important, and like a way to show other students how student advocacy can really work on campus, and the kind of work that it really takes sometimes to decolonize these systems that we are all so deeply embedded in, and what that really can take, but how it can be done with the support of your team,
There's one thing I just wanted to mention that I neglected to say during our brief presentation earlier. Cody and Carrie actually won a research competition for the entire CSU, California State University system. And so if anybody would like to watch their presentation, which was, I believe, the category was graduate level social sciences. Is that correct? And so if anybody would like to watch their presentation, the link's in the chat.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. I have been asked to compile a list of all the resources and links that have been shared throughout the presentation. So I will also do that and share with the speakers and participants. And on that note, not to butt in, I am going to give Dr. Matza a few minutes if anyone wants to stay on during the break time and see what Dr. Matza has to share with us now.